Welcome, and thanks for joining us for this edition of Scope. For so long, the reality of gender-based violence in PNG has become the eyesore of life for families living in fear of their spouses and even extended families. GBV has affected many a marriage and family setting that it has sadly become the norm in society. Ignorance settles in public view as some such incidents as the brutal beatings and murder of women in our country has provided a window into the prevalence of violence against women in Papua New Guinea. These incidents are just the tip of the iceberg of what is a day-to-day experience in PNG.
Gender-based violence is a daily reality for many women in Papua New Guinea and other parts of the world. The level and severity of GBV in PNG is declared the same as that expected in war zones. Abuse is not limited to the physical body, it is often accompanied by humiliation and terror. More often than not, sexual abuse, torture, humiliation, total domination, and death threats accompany the physical abuse inflicted on women by their husbands and partners. While physical wounds may heal in a few weeks, the emotional wounds may never heal without treatment.
I'm being traumatized. I find it so difficult to concentrate doing whatever I am doing. I can't walk around because I just cannot. I don't feel safe anymore.
Dr. Fiona Hukula, who is the gender advisor to the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, made a statement last year saying that there have been calls for harsher penalties for perpetrators of gender-based violence, changes in the law to protect women, and more proactive policing. Concerned citizens have in the past rallied together calling for an end to gender-based violence and forming pressure groups to end the silence. Women of today do not have bodily autonomy and integrity, and this action is because of the male dominance.
Is it a law that rules on high? No, no, is it the man who stands or high on drugs? Is it the leaders who give the word for war? Or is it those who sit and shake their heads but never say a word? So say no to violence, say no to war. No more killing, terrorism is no more. No babies cry as their mothers die. No more offense in the world.
Quite often now you will see women beaten badly and nobody intervenes, particularly when they are not within their family setting. There is nobody to jump up and be his or her protector. Therefore, in that way, they are definitely physically more vulnerable now. There was a time years ago when a young woman reached puberty in most PNG societies where she was chaperoned by her brothers and the possibility for her being raped or assaulted reduced considerably. What do you think needs to be done? A media rep asked this question to Dame Carol Kidu in 2014, in which she replied, "Things are being done. There is a lot of drafting of laws and so on to bring change. However, we are in a transition period. The laws are not being effectively implemented yet. There is this gap where there will continue to be women suffering as there are in Western societies, in silence behind closed doors, too ashamed to say what is happening to them."
Gender-based violence, particularly against women and children, young girls, has increased enormously in Papua New Guinea. Some people say it's cultural, but I disagree with that. I think it's abuse of culture that is causing this. Plus, it's also the many influences that are now with us in Papua New Guinea, such as abuse of alcohol, marijuana, and these things cause a lot of tension. Also, financial worries, things like that, create tensions in families as well. So there's a lot of contributing factors to the violence, and this needs to be really investigated properly. Much of the legal and policy work has been done, but our problem is with implementation. Most people would know about the Family Protection Act, Look Out in Piccaninny Act, interim protection orders and things of that nature, but there's a lot more that people need to be made aware of to do with this. For example, in 2002, there were major amendments made to the criminal code that changed the legislation on rape. It also introduced child sexual exploitation, incest, sexual assault and things of that nature. These laws are often not even known by people how these laws have changed. So there needs to be a lot of awareness on this so people know what are their rights, and also people know that they are perpetrating a crime if they do these things. In addition to that, in 2002, there were amendments made to the Evidence Act that made it easier for victims or survivors to give evidence in court, and there are also some relaxation of the evidence required for rape. But again, a lot of this is not known by the general public, and so a lot of awareness needs to be done, because by knowing about it, we act on it.
The sad truth that this statement entails is that fast forward to this era, women and children are still subject to inhumane abuse that has varied to different forms of GBV, FSV, SARV, and the list goes on, despite the laws set in place to protect them, as they are still not being effectively implemented. Anton Lutz of SARV Anger has been on the front line with others, and they have witnessed enough to plead to the government for help.
Is a poison to the nation. It's impeding our development as a nation. And the solution to that is ownership of the problem. It's not a missionary's problem, it's not a church leader's problem, it's the nation's problem. Woke muskat papa. Papa em usaid. Papa em government. I've worked in remote places out in the remote bush, governor in your province in East Sepik, and they say, Misine mama, government em papa. This work needs the government to take the lead. All of your partners, we're here, we're ready to help. But who's going to put the flag up and say, let's go in this direction, let's end SARV, let's end all the kinds of acceptable violence that we have in this country?
Rates of violence in Papua New Guinea are among the highest in the world. Children are also significantly affected. While much is said about the levels of violence, less is heard about the important work being done in all sectors of PNG to address this pervasive issue. Justice and Attorney General launched a first-of-its-kind 3-room digitally connected 1-week training session last month that looks into training focal point staff on how to have better knowledge and access to essential services to assist survivors of GBV.
This program is very important, firstly, to help us in our fight against GBV and FSV, and especially with everything that's in light of everything that's happening around us. This is very important training, very timely.
The research, via careful and thorough discussions with selected department reps, uncovered the reality of why most women have difficulty leaving violent relationships.
When we come back, a GBV survivor speaks out about her experience and how long it's taking to see some real justice served. Welcome back. There are many reasons why many women remain in violent relationships. The most common for those who are married is culturally connected, or so we tend to say, and that includes bride price, which has over many years lost its true value and prevents many female victims of violence from taking refuge, even from their own families. A 2-day inquiry held in May by the Special Parliamentary Committee on Gender-Based Violence had various stories of GBV-related issues. These stories exposed a system where laws being created to deal with all forms of violence are not being implemented effectively and at a rate that the survivor would like it to.
Nowadays, the bride price is being used to excuse violence. Traditionally, if a woman was abused in her marriage, she could pack up with her children and go back to her family, or her family would come and take her. There is an urgent need to toughen laws in bride price because a lot of domestic violence is the result of this. Because the man has already paid bride price and the woman doesn't do what he wants, he inflicts abuse on her and even the children. Today, a woman is threatened if she chose to leave. In other cases, her family either does not have the kind of money to repay the bride price or are being threatened as well. Other issues that arise also are to avoid rejection, saving family reputation, and financial dependency. The main threat a woman faces is that the moment she decides she has had enough, leaving becomes the most dangerous move she will take, as her abusive partner will not only inflict emotional and mental violence upon her, but the physical abuse often leads to death. There is widespread acknowledgement of the need for change and that this must include men and women working in partnership. How wonderful it would be to make this statement effective in action so that women and children would not have to live in fear because the man that vowed to love, protect, and provide for her has reduced her to be in fear of him. Children continue this way of life played out in front of them, allowing them to believe that this is the only way to solve issues because there is no one brave enough to confront the perpetrator that he or she is wrong. We do not have any support mechanisms in place to teach children that violence is not the answer. Humanity speaks with the loudest voice in the world. Cultivate love and kindness in a child, and you will gather love and kindness. And only then will you build a great civilization, a great nation. These innocent beings deserve more than the life they have been dealt, all because a force that was meant for peace unleashed a hell uncalled for. How many more are to be added to statistics before our laws take precedence over these issues faced by women, children, and men too in our country? Yes, women too have subjected men to a form of abuse and their families. Perhaps not as violent, but still even good men are abused. Abuse in any form should not be allowed to either gender. The voices that have cried and lived through nightmarish abuse will hopefully cease as the Special Parliamentary Committee, selected government departments, and stakeholders proceed to finding solutions that will eradicate this so-called norm once and for all. The two-day inquiry into GBV in May this year was one so emotional and controversial that it left those that attended uneasy with the reality of certain cases that were being discussed. A GBV survivor, Hannah Joku, is among many victims whose cases have been on a wait list for years, all because the system is not run efficient enough to cater to the persecution of their perpetrators.
Questions I am still asked today are simple things. How to write a statement? Who will take me to the hospital? Will the police protect me if I press charges? How can I get help but safely? It's ongoing, it's heartbreaking, and it's wrong. Not enough information is known by everyday Papua New Guineans of what their rights are and what the law says. Let's change that. If there is anything that comes out of this special parliamentary committee, it's my fervent hope that there are improvements made to our systems to enable victims of violence, male or female, the ease of accessibility to resources, and swift action to the processes so that we are not walking targets of further violence and we can move on to live in peace.
While GBV in the country is cause for real alarm, in recent years we have seen greater efforts to address this very wicked problem. Last year, provincial MPs formed a coalition aimed at finding ways to address GBV. We have also seen an increase in relevant law reform and the number of policy frameworks aimed at addressing this issue.
We will examine the challenges with investigating and prosecuting gender-based violence cases across the country and how to address them and to hold perpetrators and those who aid and abet perpetrators to account.
Minister Abel stated in the special inquiry in May the main focus of work needed to be done, saying that the deep concern shown around this issue in the country at present is evident.
We collectively express our deep concern around this issue. That's why we're here. We care deeply about what is happening in our country, and we are concerned that as we sit here and speak, these violent acts are happening even today. And the women are being dragged, and burned and persecuted for sorcery-related issues. Women are being beaten up in homes. Economic times are difficult, and all the circumstances of poverty and COVID and being stuck at home only makes some of these pressures worse. So, in closing, I want to appeal to everyone, particularly our men folk, but to all of us as a community. We have to be resilient as Papua New Guineans. We're going to go through challenges at times, but never ever is it an excuse to exert violence on a person, particularly if that person is weaker than you are.
There is no honor in a man beating
Beating up a woman or a child, or forcing yourself upon a woman or a child. It is in fact a disgrace.
Awareness of the GBV issue is beginning to make a difference in PNG. Laws are changing and more people are waking up to the fact that physical violence and emotional abuse is never the right way to handle issues. There is still a long road ahead for PNG concerning this issue. However, the more people who speak up against GBV, the faster things will change.
When we come back, 1,300 graduates at the University of Goroka. Welcome back to Scope. The University of Goroka 24th graduation was hailed a success by the new acting Vice Chancellor Tang Waninga, and the success was accorded to the newly appointed Governing Council. The graduation ceremony of more than 1,300 students was conducted in two parts. First batch was held on Tuesday, 29th June, and second batch on Friday, 2nd July 2021.
Day one of the graduation on Tuesday, 29 June, saw 700 plus graduates of the bachelor's and diplomas in education, secondary school teaching, and the technical vocational education training diplomas. And day two on Friday, 2nd July, was for 600 plus postgraduate and content studies. Chancellor Joe Wemin spoke on behalf of the University Governing Council to declare the graduation open on both days. He encouraged the graduates to be great leaders and great implementers who are guided by moral principles and have a positive mindset to change the country for the better.
You have to believe in yourself. Without vision, what the Bible says, you will perish. You have to make an input to realize an output. You have to invest in yourself to see an outcome. I now challenge you all to go out into your respective field and be a great leader. A great leader starts with your heart, starts with your mind. It all starts with you.
Women further thanked the university staff, both teaching and non-teaching, for their tireless efforts and cooperation that made the 24th graduation a success. Meanwhile, Acting Vice Chancellor of University of Goroka thanked Prime Minister James Marape and his government for their trust in the appointment of the new administration and the Governing Council of the university through the Minister for Dehurst and Sports, Wesley Raminai.
All of you graduating today, our focus is to give you the best and not to lose our focus. Students' learning needs are very, very important to us as the top management team, plus the council members. They're supporting, including the minister and the government. They want us to be a university to promote quality education. And quality can only come about when we have enough lecturers, when we have our buildings, when we have teaching and learning facilities to the standard where people will come and enjoy.
Dr. Waniga applauded the Governing Council for its decision to rescind the previous decision which did not allow the graduation to eventuate. After only 6 months in office as the Minister for DHEST, Minister Raminai was proud to be the guest of honor for the first part of the graduation, and he encouraged the students to be the leaders they ought to be wherever they go.
You will be leaders in your own right. You can't say we politicians are the leaders only. In fact, you will be the leaders. You will be teaching our young generation of our country, Papua New Guinea, and you'll be taking a lead. That's why you are leaders. Whatever we do, everyone is watching us. So we must act and be the best we can in the field that we have chosen.
Knowledge is power, and getting a bachelor's degree opens the door to opportunity. And so it was with a lone graduate of Bachelor of Arts in Media and Communication. Eric Super was the only one who completed the course after starting off with 45 entrants 4 years ago. He is now employed by Post-Korean newspaper in Goroka.
Finally, I've been looking for some WAS project. I've only been putting out the media or some funding and ready look running water supply project in the community, and I've been writing this proposal. This proposal where we study one course and I need to special project management. It's all about me write a proposal and submitting for submission. So we've been making through goal on national planning. I've been approving 1.6 million.
Super's proposal was for a WASH project in his electorate in Shuave district, Simbu province, for which funding will soon be released with support from his local member and the district development authority. It will be implemented soon. Among the graduates was a graduate of business administration who obtained his bachelor's degree after a second attempt in his studies.
I went first to the wine world. That was in 2011, 12, and 13. Okay, so in 2012, our cash ticket didn't came early, so we traveled by ship to Leh. So that was on Rabaul Queen. So from Rabaul to Kimbed and to Leh, but that was on that Thursday, 2nd February. On our way to Leh, we sank. So I lost everything.
Traumatized after the Rabaul Queen incident, Todor Trevor was reluctant to pursue his studies, but with his parents' encouragement, he went back to University of Goroka, to where he now completed his studies successfully.
I want to dedicate this degree to my father. Like he didn't lose hope in me. Even though I did many things that didn't please him, but he still have the belief in me that I will complete my education. So I want to dedicate this to him.
Colonius Clement is a correctional officer from Beyond Correctional Institution in Medellin. He spent 2 years at the University of Goroka doing social development and gender studies, and now graduated with a bachelor's degree.
We are dealing with adults, so what I learn in here, we can carry we can banish na can educate him online, especially about me attach on them online also rehabilitation workshops, so we can give him some schools now about genders, about man Mary Karabus, so that you can down in one plan, another plan. Even the workplace too, gender now and people are priority, so we need to respect our women by respecting Mary, so we work one thing.
Jelina Tangilikun is a primary school teacher who has been teaching in Eastern Highlands for 5 years. When she decided to take up further studies, at UOG in special inclusive education. She said that 2 years of studying haven't been easy as a mother and a student, especially when it comes to finances. But she said with the Lord's help, she was able to complete her studies.
For my case, I just left my kids with my parents at home. I came for the program, to take up the program. So while doing the program, there are challenges that I faced. Sleepless nights just to make up, to take up the assignable tasks to be done and given on the due date. And even finance, it's very difficult in a situation where you become a mother and a student at the same time.
Dr. Teng Waninga is satisfied that under his leadership, the university could conduct the graduation ceremony, though faced with certain obstacles, including the COVID-19 restrictions. The 24th graduation ceremony of the University of Goroka was a success, and the success was accorded to the newly appointed governing council of the university.
That ends another episode of Scope, a kind reminder to apply simple measures to prevent the transmission of the coronavirus. Regularly wash your hands with soap and water, cough or sneeze into your elbow, and exercise social distancing. If you're feeling sick, please stay at home. You can also call the COVID-19 hotline number for more information or assistance.